When Xuanzang comes to Nalanda University, he has described that the university had a splendid building, splendid library housed in three buildings. And the first one, that is Ratna Sagar, was nine-story tall. Bakhtiyar Khilji went to Nalanda. He destroyed not only Nalanda but many other universities. Decline of India set in from there. That soft power has to be protected by a hard power. If you are vulnerable to invasion, you will not be able to sustain that intellectual vibrancy. Eternal vigilance is the price of civilization.
Hello and welcome to the Statesman Talk. I'm Ananya Dasgupta. On this episode, we are joined by Shashi Ranjan Kumar, bureaucrat and author of the book The Decline of the Hindu Civilization. So, thank you very much for joining us on the Statesman Talk today.
Thank you for calling me here and inviting here and giving me your platform.
Sir, it's probably very interesting that we are talking right after the Prime Minister wrote about the Somnath temple and visited the temple as well. What made you think of writing a book on the decline of the Hindu civilization? Why do you think the time is right now?
I think this idea had been building up in my mind for a long time. And if you have read even the introduction of the book, you will find that Naipaul had a great influence on me. And particularly his first two books, An Area of Darkness and India a Wounded Civilization. That was the point when I started rethinking about our past. The way our past is taught in schools and colleges, and what it came out from Naipaul's writing. And he inspired me to go into original sources, primary texts, and not depend on secondary literature. So I started going into Chachnama. I started reading Kitab-e Yamini of Al-Utbi, Kitabul Hind of Al-Biruni. And then gradually the story that emerged from those texts was completely at variance with what I was taught. I will confess that I am not particularly has been a student of history in the sense that I have no formal education in history. But whatever you read up to class 10, and particularly during the preparation of the civil services, the kind of the 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 story that I got from there and what I got from reading through those primary texts were completely at variance. So then at some point of time, I decided not exactly, I can't exactly pinpoint a date that I will write about it. And I started writing in 2019, finished in 2023. So by chance, by sheer coincidence that it has been just published.
In fact, somebody at the book launch recently said that it's probably a brilliant book because it is not written by a historian. I thought that was quite a significant comment because you went to the primary sources yourself. What, according to you, would be the golden age of Hindu civilization and what made it so vibrant?
I think the golden age was, if you look at the entire first millennium of the Common Era, entire first millennium of the Common Era, it was a very vibrant, intellectually very vibrant civilization. Not merely intellectually, but also materially a very vibrant civilization. And what made it so vibrant was open exchange of ideas, spirit of inquiry was very important. We have a very important tradition of vaad, you must be knowing. Vaad-vivaad. I have said somewhere in my book that if I have to summarize the essence of our civilization in two sentences, what it would be like. The first sentence would be Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. The truth is one, but wise people say it differently. This theme is so important to Indic civilization. It recurs again and again. The story of an elephant and five blind men is found in Jaina's text, in Buddhist text, in Hindu text. So here, truth has never been one, this is the truth and rest other is falsehood. That is a very, the most beautiful aspect of civilization. Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. The second most important essence of our civilization has been Vade Vade Jayate Tattvabodh. How do you know the truth? Only through argument and counter argument. Vade vade jayate tattva bodh. Tattva is sat.
Hmm.
Huh? Bodh is how do you perceive that tattva. सो तत्वबोध तत्वबोध कैसे होगा वादे वादे जायते तत्वबोध इन द न्याय सूत्रा गौतम says in the very beginning of the न्याय सूत्रा that तत्वार्थ अनुसंधानार्थो वाद वाद is not the debate that we are having these days on television just for scoring points तत्व के अर्थ के अनुसंधान के लिए वाद है Vad is for the purpose of reaching the truth, the reality. These two are the essence of our civilization, and that made us so intellectually vibrant.
If someone were to pick up this book and consider reading it, what would you say would be the reason that person must continue, must read this book today on the decline of the Hindu civilization in 2026?
Rediscovery of our past. You can frame it as a rediscovery of our past. I was myself not knowing about our own heritage. Go through our classics in different fields, in astronomy, in mathematics, in aesthetics. That's so our achievement is so stupendous. So we need to reconnect with our past. That's the single most important reason to read this book. Reconnecting, rediscovering our own past.
And while you were reconnecting, as you were saying, with primary sources, by reading some of those primary sources, what did you feel was the single turning point where Hindu civilization could have avoided decline, or was there even a single turning point like that?
See, first of all, we have to understand that you may be very intellectually vibrant, but that soft power has to be protected by a hard power. If you are vulnerable to invasion, you will not be able to sustain that intellectual vibrancy. It's very, very important to understand that. So, and that we have learned from our past. If you come to 12th century, when actually the invasion of Turkic invasions begin, and in 1206 Delhi Sultanate is established. I can just take you to various fields. There is a Bhaskaracharya who is writing Siddhant Shiromani in 1150. One of the most important work on astronomy and mathematics India has ever produced. There is Jaydev who is writing brilliant poetry in Bengal. So, but what happened? Despite this intellectual vibrancy, we were not able to repel the invaders, and we were subjugated by them.
So, you're talking about the external forces, the invaders. How did they play into the decline? Were they the main culprit in a way, or was it more like the final blow?
From my research, the invasion made lot of difference. And what happened was that within 100 years of establishment of the Sultanate in 1206, almost entire India became under the rule of Delhi Sultans. And all your institutions like vihars, mutts, temples, they all were either destroyed or they declined because of lack of patronage. So intellectual vibrancy is sustained in a certain socio-political economic context. Once that is reversed, then decline was bound to happen. So I will say that, yeah, to a great extent, the decline was because of the fact that we were defeated in those battles.
But were there issues that came purely from within the Hindu society as well?
I have somewhere written in my book that between 8th century, the Muhammad bin Qasim attacks Sindh in 711 CE, and Ghazni comes in 11th century. We had 300 years, 3 centuries of time to think about it. But what at that point in time has happened that we were not able to go out. No, there is no tradition of exploration in India, no tradition of cartography in India. So while people were coming from outside to understand what India was, nobody from India was going out to understand other societies. And even when we were faced with this kind of invasion, we did not go out.
Hmm.
We did not inquire into that. After Muhammad bin Qasim attack of Sindh, at that point of time, whole of Persia, by that time, whole of Persia had come under Muslim rule. And Zoroastrians had fled Persia. They had taken shelter in Gujarat. Hmm. But that did not, we did not become curious to know who these people are, where are they coming from,
Hmm.
what is their text, what is their ideology, what are their institutions. We should have gone out and found about it, but we did not. So, in the way, say that single most important reason for these loss I attribute it to India's disinterestedness in the outside world.
But I remember this conversation at your book launch the other day, where author Amish Tripathi mentioned the fact that how important it is to study and understand the enemy as well. It is, of course, important to be on the guard. You must know how to defend yourself, but you must also know who your enemy is, and that, I think, is what you are saying. Learning about the other.
The last chapter of my book, its title is "If You Don't Know Your Enemy."
Hmm.
Your enemy. And this is a brilliant quote from Sun Tzu, the strategic thinker, Chinese strategic thinker. He says that if you know your enemy and if you know yourself, you will never lose a battle. If you know yourself but do not know your enemy, for every battle you will win, you will lose a battle.
Hmm.
So it's very, very important to know who your enemy is. Okay. What are his ideas? What are his methods? What is his worldview?
Were there any stories of resistance that we don't know much about, which, resistance against this decline of Hindu civilization?
The resistance was all along. It's, the, there is a story of defeats, that of course is true, but at the same time, there is also a story of resistance.
Hmm.
But in resistance, we had not been very successful, in the sense that we were never able to evict the foreigners from the country. We kept fighting, there is no doubt, and there were heroes and heroines who did the job, and that also saved us. Despite the fact that we have been under foreign rule for so many centuries, look at what happened to when Islam comes from Arabia. Within 100 years, what happens? From Persia, Central Asia to Spain, all fall in quick succession
Hmm.
without much resistance. This Arab imperialism was stopped at the gate of India. Arabs could not advance beyond Sindh into India proper.
Hmm.
I mean, they were confined only to the province of Sindh.
Hmm.
300 years after that, Ghazni comes and he starts, the plunders of various places. And then 150 years after that, it is only in the battle of Tarai, second battle of Tarai, that Prithviraj Chauhan is defeated and Delhi settlement is established.
Hmm.
So, if you look at history from 700 to right up to independence, there have always been resistance. There were no time when our ancestors were not resisting the invaders, but we were not fully successful.
What do you think, ancient India, which gave the world something like the zero, why is it that we couldn't make use of that firepower, that intellectual firepower to stop the decline?
I don't think we were particularly good in fighting battles. And we did not invent any technology for war fighting the way others were inventing.
Hmm.
And I think because of Dharma, and the emphasis on Dharma and Dharma Yudh, we were always fighting battle in a certain predictable manner. If you analyze all the battles that we lost, you will be very surprised to find that most of the time we were outwitted by the enemies. We were deceived by the enemies. In second battle of Tarai in 1192, first battle, Muhammad Ghori is defeated.
Hmm.
Hmm? He runs back from the field. He prepares again for the battle, understands the way Indians fight, improvises his
Strategy.
tactic and strategy. What he brilliantly does in the second battle of Tarai is that he divides his cavalry into four parts, okay, and instructs them never to engage with Indians in close combat. Because in close combat, Indians came in huge number. Prithviraj's army, dashed into the enemy, and with great valor and firepower, they had defeated him in the first battle. So he said, don't ever engage with them in close combat. Keep raining arrows on them from a distance. After half a day had passed, the Indian fighters had become restless, and they'd become tired. At that point of time, he decided to bring one unit of cavalry, which he had kept in reserve, and unleash on Prithviraj's army. And Prithviraj was defeated. Take next battle, Battle of Panipat. Again in Battle of Panipat, Babur had put set a solid defense. When Ibrahim Lodi army marches to meet Babur's army in the battle, suddenly when Ibrahim Lodi army almost comes very close to the defenses of Babur, they realize that their defenses are very secure. And how they are secure? They had collected 700 bullock carts, tied one with another through twisted bull hides, and made it stronger. Once they see that they are very well defended, suddenly the Ibrahim Lodi army halts. And because it suddenly stops movements, the rear of the Ibrahim Lodi's army presses the front of his own army, and there is a kind of commotion. There is no space left to maneuver for the Ibrahim Lodi's army, and Ibrahim Lodi's army is defeated. So, time and again, you will see that we have been outwitted by the enemies because we kind of fought wars in a very predictable manner.
And what would you say led to the loss of our great universities as well? Universities like Nalanda.
Yeah. So when Bakhtiyar Khilji went to Nalanda, he destroyed not only Nalanda but many other universities, Bikramshila, Odantapuri, almost all places, and these were repository of wisdom, intellect. Thousands and thousands of manuscripts were lying there. They were all destroyed. Whoever could flee, some of them fled with the manuscript to Tibet or Nepal. Most of them were burnt. And this is a story that repeats again and again. Most of your places were destroyed. And the intellectual decline of India set in from there.
You're talking about some very fascinating story, such vivid details because you've read some of that text for yourself. What were the challenges in putting together a book like this on the decline of Hindu civilization, even the coinage of the term Hindu civilization itself?
Yeah, the coinage actually I have tried to explain in the very beginning of the introduction that some historians might scoff at the word Hindu itself because many of them think that Hinduism is an invention of 19th century. And Hinduism in any meaningful sense did not exist before that because Hindus themselves were not really aware of their identity in a self-conscious way. So I have dealt with that question. But the challenge before me was basically that if you look at each chapter, you can read it as a book of history, but I would like to read you this book as a book of ideas. Each chapter is actually a chapter on an idea or a related set of ideas. And each chapter actually is worth many more books. So the challenge before me was how to go through vast amount of literature
Hmm.
and then kind of give a summary of that which captures the essence of uh, those ideas without being too technical, but at the same time should not become so trite and commonplace that it loses all meaning.
Any story
Yeah.
or any learning from your own reading of the classics for putting together this book that is not part of the book itself, and that you would like to share? Anything that is not there in this book?
Yeah, I have not included purposely, for example, advancement that we had made in field of architecture.
Hmm.
There is a very important book, perhaps the earliest specialized text on architecture is called Mansar. And you will be surprised that when I started reading Mansar, uh, I found that the book contains description of constructing building up to 12 story
12 stories.
12 story. So now one may say, no, no, this is just somebody wrote like that. There is evidence of that because when Xuanzang comes to Nalanda University in 7th century, he has described that the university had a splendid building, splendid library housed in three buildings and named Ratna Sagar, Ratna Sagar,
Hmm.
Ratna Udidhi, and Ratna Ranjak. And the first one, that is Ratna Sagar, was 9-story tall. More importantly and more interestingly, I found that there are different, in village planning and town planning, there are different types of road that is described in Mansar. Marg, Mahamarg, Vithi, with their width. If it is such a such width, it will be called Vithi.
Hmm.
If the width is so much, it will be called Mahamarga. If width is Y, it will be called Marg.
Hmm.
And concept of footpath in that in Mahamarg, whether there will be two-side footpath or one-side footpath. And now we are seeing in our own cities
Basically, urban planning done at that time.
that point of time.
Town planning.
Town planning.
Very, very interesting to hear all of this. Just a hypothetical question: if you could go back in time and give any advice to any Hindu ruler of that time, what would that advice be?
That was that don't uh, turn inward, go outward. Okay, look at the world. Don't be defensive. That's also has been one of our
Hmm.
weakness. Our posture is always defensive. Let us take the battle into the camps of enemies rather than fighting on our own territory. Please bear this in mind. All our battles have been fought
Hmm.
on Indian territory. We have not taken the battles into enemy camp.
Actually, that's quite a brilliant observation. Something that I at least hadn't thought about so far. That we've always fought these wars on our own territory because we were being invaded.
Yes.
Very interesting. But as
Just one
huh,
more moment I will take. See the person who is launching the offensive, he has always the first mover advantage. Hmm. He will decide the time. He will decide the location. Huh. He will be continuously inventing new technology. He will be continuously thinking about new mode of warfare, organization.
hmm,
While as a defensive power, you always will be left to defend yourself. Your will be reactive,
hmm.
not proactive. So I understand some of the reasons why we are not offensive, but even considering those reasons, we should have taken those rulers should have taken the battles into the enemy's camps and not allowed them to come inside you and leave the initiative completely to the invaders.
Very interesting observation. And we're talking about Nalanda, we're talking about the invention of zero. A lot of us feel that our culture is fading today as well. What parallels do you see with the modern world and from what you have been studying?
Eternal vigilance is the price of civilization. Unless you're eternally vigilant, because civilization is not something eternal,
Mm.
it is subject to the same law of life and death, of rise and fall. So if you are not eternally vigilant, then you will have to pay the price.
And
If you are eternally vigilant, then you can sustain your civilization.
very interesting, sir. Do you think that we are now finally learning from some of those past lessons, if not mistakes?
Yes, we are really learning, but we still have a long way to go.
But we are at a position where we are in a frame of mind to accept these new information that's now coming out.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
So we are talking at least of the revival and the fact that we want to go back to that past glory and the past prominence of the Hindu civilization.
We are reconnecting with our past at this point of time, and we have got at this point of time the confidence to do it.
Final question, sir. What would be one takeaway from this book for anybody who picks it up and wants to read it, and especially for a young reader? You know, somebody who's young in India in 2026 and wants to reconnect with the past. What is that one takeaway that person should know that I will get from this book?
I think this is particularly not a book about particular period. It's not a book about particular dynasty or a particular person in all their complexity. It's a book which takes a long look at the history. So if you are interested more in ideas than in persons or event, this is the right book for you. So this book is especially meant for those who want to engage themselves with ideas.
Not typically a history book.
Not typically a history book.
Engage with ideas, learn
Engage
something
with ideas.
from the past.
Yeah,
and
in fact, if you had attended my book launch, there I had spoken at length about the differences in Indian science. I am talking of ancient and medieval past, our ancient approach towards science, and the Western, the Greco-Romans approach towards science. And I tried to kind of make a distinction between the two, because the West, the Greco-Roman world, was relying more on deductive approach, whereas our ancestors were relying more on empirical approach, observations. They were most based on logic and deduction. So that distinction I have tried to make in that book.
In fact, you do touch upon the Greco-Roman as well as the Chinese civilizations in your book as well.
Yeah. And this has been done with a particular purpose. The one way was for me to just say these were our achievements in the past in these fields. But I was also interested in knowing where did we stand in comparison to our peers at that point of time. So that is the reason why you will find that in the first part of the book, you will find that I am constantly going to the Greco-Roman world, also the Chinese civilization, sometimes to the Arab world also. In fact, there is a whole section in this book on sciences in the Islamic world, particularly the invention in Baghdad, where Beit al-Hikmah was established during the Abbasid Caliph time. So it's a comparative approach.
In the end, again, if anybody were to ask you, why should I read this book, what would your answer be?
My answer will be that past is very important. We are here because of something. We must know. And only when we know our past, that we will really be able to create a future for us, a glorious future for us.
Thank you very much, sir, for joining us on the Statesman Talk. That's it then on this episode of the Statesman Talk. Don't forget to post your comments on what you thought of this conversation, and don't forget to pick up this book as well, On the Decline of the Hindu Civilization. To remember, we come to you from the House of the Statesman, which is one of India's oldest English newspapers.